thank you, Mr. Chair, for taking this up. And I asked for a little latitude because it's a complicated matter, and I want to make sure everybody really understands that. So I'll just start by telling you a little bit of background, is that I'm a sucker for good advertising, okay? And it got me in trouble once as a kid. There used to be this ad for one of the Mackinac Island ferry companies, and understand that most of the ferries are really high-speed boats going over there, but there was one that took about 3 times as long, but they ran an ad that said, because getting there is half the fun. And I screamed and yelled enough, and my parents actually finally bought into it. They were furious as we sat there for 45 minutes getting to the island. And I quickly realized that getting there is not half the fun. Getting there is just getting there. The fun is on the island and in the port cities of St. Ignace and Mackinac City. But sadly, in recent years, getting there has become a huge part of the expense. So much so that my own family and families throughout the state are beginning to reconsider whether we even go to Mackinac Island or not. For a family of 4 to go over to ride their bikes for a day at the basic costs without any of the new options like the new enhanced boarding status where you can pay $12 and cut to the front of the line, it would cost between $225 and $249 just to get there, depending on the ages of your kids. Absolutely nobody comes to northern Michigan just to ride the ferry. They come from Mackinac Island, where more than 80% of Mackinac Island is a state park paid for by each and every one of us, by each and every one of our tax dollars. That the state provides such an incredible resource that the island draws more than 1.2 million visitors every year. And the people and the businesses on that island have made it such a great place that Mackinac Island has just been named for the 2nd year in a row America's top summer destination. That's why people come. For my own family of 6, that same day trip that we used to do all the time just to go up to ride our bikes would cost $370. And I can tell you what our family would do and what most families would do is they'd save that money. They'd take their bikes to Petoskey, ride around for the day, go out to a beautiful dinner, and leave with $200 still in their pocket. So because of this, because of the cost of getting to this unique resource provided largely by the state, by the public here, there's always been a reliance on, and because there's always been a reliance on private corporations to access these lands, that led to the creation of laws to protect this access and keep it affordable to visitors. Since there's no actual road to the island, the ferries basically are the road. It has been a mutually beneficial relationship for 125 years, where the island benefits from efficient and safe transportation, and the ferry companies benefit by being able to make money transporting to people to a location that the state, private industry, and people have made so desirable. To be sure, ferry companies are entitled to fair compensation for their services, but the arrangement has always been the product of a public and private cooperation, whereby their services are provided under strict oversight and regulation to ensure affordable access to an important part of this state. Some will argue that there are technically 3 ways to get to the island. You can fly if you have the money and you're one of the few dozen people who can get a ticket on any given day to get to the island. You can bring your own boat if you're lucky enough to have your own boat and find a dock available at the 80 Slip Marina. But for most of the 1.2 million visitors, we have no choice but to use the ferries. There's been challenges with this system for decades, but it's worked fairly well because we've always had, until last year, competition. Here's a bit of background on that subject. A few years ago, there were 3 ferry companies. Then Starline bought Arnold Line, and then there were 2. Then in early 2022, Shepler's Ferry was acquired by the Hoffman family of companies, a private equity firm based in Naples, Florida, that according to their own materials has acquired 200-plus brands and properties in 400-plus locations in 30 countries around the world. Then in June of last year, June 2024, that same company then purchased Starline to make the takeover complete. One private company now owns all of the ferries and all of the ferry docks on Mackinac Island. They now completely control virtually all access to Mackinac Island, including that Michigan State Park that we all pay for that constitutes more than 80% of that island. Because the same private equity firm has purchased all of the ferry docks on Mackinac Island, there is now no place for a competitor to even land on the island, making legitimate competition impossible. Now, I'm not an attorney, but to a layman, this sounds like a clearly uncompetitive business environment and potentially a solid antitrust case. But again, that's not for me to determine. That's an issue for the Attorney General. But keep in mind, there are tangible factors in our laws and regulation that actually help protect this potential monopoly. Nobody can just go and build a new dock. It would take years to even get a permit to open a new pier. There are very strict controls, as there should be, from EGLE, DNR, EPA, and so many others over the construction of any new commercial dock, even if there were space for it. So the only check we have on the current system are the laws that were designed with this exact situation in mind. So stay with me for just a minute. In 1899, a state law established the City of Mackinac Island Charter. Mackinac Island today, still to this day, is the only city in Michigan that does not have what's called home rule. Their charter is controlled by us, and they can't change it. We have to change it. That charter was in no small part crafted to protect the public, even in the face of anti-competitive situations. That law is still in force today. It gives the City of Mackinac Island the ability to, quote, establish or authorize, license, and regulate ferries to and from the city or any place therein, or from one part of the city to another, and to regulate and prescribe from time to time the charges and prices for transportation of persons or properties thereon. That's pretty clear. That language was clear to the people who wrote it back in 1899 when they used to think with common sense. Whatever it cost a person to get to the island on a ferry was subject to regulation from the island. But we no longer live in such clear thinking days. Nowadays, people parse words to the point where, with clever wording, a person or a company could get around this existing law by recategorizing the fees in a creative manner. And that's exactly what happened recently when the new owner of all the ferries wanted to hike the rates again. This time, Mackinac Island said no. And the response was basically thumbing their nose at the statute that's been in place since 1899. No fare increase? Fine. We'll just jack up the fees on parking or baggage or bikes. We'll get around your laws that have been in place for more than 125 years. Last year, for instance, there was no fee for day parking. Today, it's a minimum of $10, depending on where you park. Last year, when there was still competition, the ticket fare for a trip to the island was $34. This year, it went from $34 to $36 to $38, and we're only in mid-June, plus a new $3 convenience fee, and day parking that went from free to $10 at the cheapest rate. So with none of the extras like that new line cutting feature added, at a minimum, the cost for a person going to the island for a day went from $34 to $51. That's a 50% increase since competition was eliminated less than 1 year ago. Now, I am all for the free market, but in the face of an uncompetitive environment that has such dramatic implications for access to an important public part of our state, we need to take action. Now, ideally, we'd live in a world where the people could still read that 1899 law for what it was and what it's been accepted to mean for 125 years. But unfortunately, we need a little bit more clarity in our modern litigious society. And ideally, Mackinac Island would be able to just handle this on their own. But since they are the only city in Michigan that does not have home rule, we have to do it through what's called a local act here in Lansing, which means we need a 2/3 vote by the legislature to pass it. Once we pass this bill, it doesn't actually change the law. It simply allows Mackinac Island to put this measure on their ballot for their residents to determine. Again, something every other city in Michigan can already do. So whether you're with us or not on the matter of providing some oversight to a corporation that single-handedly controls access to a part of our state, then I at least ask you to support this bill in the spirit of allowing the city of Mackinac Island the same self-determination that every other city in the state already has. I thank you for your consideration. I'm open to any questions you have, though we have real experts on the situation about to testify after me.
Yeah, so I think this is a good time actually now to adopt the sub, just so we're all talking about the same bill. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I do. When we brought this bill up, inadvertently, I mean, we weren't even thinking about the impact on Mackinac City or St. Ignace, because other than recognizing that if tourism to the island plummets, it hurts their economies just as badly, because people who go to one go to the other. But we weren't thinking about whether this infringed on any rights or anything like that. And a couple of our city members, which I'm very glad they brought it up, had real concerns about whether this meant that the island was now trying to regulate or trying to control things on their side of the water. That was never the intent. The only intent was to clarify what's already been in law since 1899, that the city of Mackinac Island has the right to regulate ferry prices. That's the only intent. But I don't want to mess with my other beautiful cities here. So what we put in there, and I hope it's right, and if it's not, we can even update it more. The intent is not to have discord between our local communities. We put in there a line that says that this has in no way infringes upon any of the rights that these cities already have. And so if we need to strengthen that, we're willing to strengthen that, but our intent is only to address this situation that's going on with the ferries, not to influence the cities. And the amendment, the substitute does two things. One, it does that, and two, it fixes a drafting error that I think they just made inadvertently at LSP.
So I think we'll have probably discussion on that during public testimony, looking at the cards of other folks. But are there any questions? I know there are questions generally, but are there any questions on the sub? Okay, so I will take a motion from Vice Chair Hauk to adopt the S1 version of Senate Bill 304. Will the clerk please call the question?
Chair Moss?
Yes.
Senator Polanyi? Yes. Senator McCann? Yes. Senator Voino? Yes. Senator Santana? Yes. Senator Hertel? Yes. Senator Singh? Senator Hauk?
Yes.
Senator Weber? Yes. Senator Lowers? Yes. Senator Bellino? Yes. Mr. Chair, there are 10 yeas, 0 nays. The substitute is adopted.
Now, general questions will start off with Senator Bellino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been going to Mackinac since I first got sober. My first AA sponsor, his family owned a place called McNally Cottage, and I went there a lot starting in the early 80s.
I'm surprised you didn't go before you got sober. That's
It
happening.
wouldn't have been much fun. But when I got elected here, guys told me, look, Joe, go to St. Ignace. They want us to go there. We could park for free, and it's an easy ride to the island, even shorter. And you miss the massive crowds. So I've been doing that since I got elected. And then I go this year, and it's 45 freaking bucks. That used to be free. Now, I believe in the free market. And as the ex-energy chair, besides energy, which is a regulated monopoly, this sounds like something that the DOJ or the AG's got to get involved in, because we don't want to mess with the free market. But to go from 0 to 45 freaking bucks is, I feel like I bent over and grabbed my ankles, really.
Well, yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you, but again, I'm not part of the Attorney General's office, but I hope they take a look at this. Right now, what we can do in the legislature is just help them clarify what should have been common sense to everybody. I mean, back in 1899, when it says you can regulate the price of the ferry, those guys just said, okay, I get it. Now we put it, well, that doesn't say baggage fees. I mean, I guess that one did, but you can all do all these. So we're trying to clarify it for a culture that no longer thinks logically. But I think you're right. I think there's a very good case for the Attorney General in this to look at, and I'd imagine that we're going to hear more about that. So
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions for Senator Damoose specifically? We do have a lineup of folks, variety of views on this that will come up to testify. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.